All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to episode 72. It's Michelle Renee. And today I have an awesome episode for you. I'm excited to welcome Brandi Smith to today's episode. And we are going to be talking about different integrated practices for health of the mind, body, and soul to achieve ideal athletic performance and overall health. So please join me in welcoming Brandi to the show today. And so Brandi, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and just invite you to introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit about what you do.
Hi, everybody. Rochelle, thank you so much for having me on today. So I'm Brandi Smith, like she just said. I'm the founder of Perfect 10 Physical Therapy and Performance Training and recent venture founder of Perfect 10 PT Academy. And I was a former collegiate gymnast and had lots and lots of injuries, dealt with fear, which a 3-year bout of fear that about crippled me. And we'll talk more about that. But through my experience as an athlete, I got really interested in the body and the mind, and later went on after finishing my collegiate career to go to physical therapy school, get a degree, get a bunch of fellowships and a whole lot of initials after my name. And then went on to help thousands of athletes since, from recreational athletes all the way up to Olympic level, current world championship level athletes in various sports. So thank you for having me, and I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. So that's very interesting about, so it sounds like you work with kind of a range of athletes. What kind of different sports or types of athletics have you maybe touched on in that?
Well, so I've pretty much done the gamut. So as far as like working with high-end, high-level athletes, I have worked with professional and Olympic and elite runners, triathletes and marathoners, ultra marathoners. I worked with professional tennis players, professional golf players, and I currently work with Olympic level, national team level gymnasts who are currently on the world team for USA Gymnastics and representing the United States across the country, across the world, not just country. But then recreational wise, I've worked with every sport, like volleyball, basketball, track, wrestling, you name it, martial arts, baseball, all the balls, baseball, football, basketball, volleyball, softball, cheerleading, dance, figure skating. I've worked with pretty much everyone. I've grown a specialty in the gymnastics, dance, cheerleading, figure skating, like parkour. I do weird things with my body world. Circus athletes, like they all come. I've developed a specialty in that. I'm not limited to just that, but I've developed a specialty in that, and my business does cater to that since 2008. But yeah, and then I also do sports science education across the country. I've been teaching for USA Gymnastics and other private clubs, privately through myself, and across the globe, actually, for other organizations on sports science and health and wellness, nutrition, overall well-being, right? Since 2009. Yeah, so.
That's awesome. You've really worked with all kinds of different athletes, and also have sort of from that found sort of your own specialty in working with those folks. But you mentioned—
Well, and I would say one more thing. I actually end up working with the whole family at some point, which I absolutely love doing, like, which is fun. So working with mom, dad, and like all the siblings, it's many times where I will work with an entire family. So I see everything.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow, you
Yeah.
don't do that every day. So that's a unique kind of flavor that it sounds like you bring to it as well.
Yeah, it's kind of fun because you get to work on that mindset around the family dynamics and how to negotiate that when you're in the process of healing and in the world of wellness, right? Like, how can we be well as a family? Because high level sports, like if you're into some of these sports for any amount of time or period and you get to a certain level, you're really committed. Like not just you as an athlete, like especially with the younger athletes, and it's growing more and more. We're like AAU, like all these specialty sports, it becomes a family commitment, and so it really does become like a family healing process. Even when I'm treating just an athlete, it becomes kind of an overall well-being for the whole family, like what's best for our entire family, like nervous system and health and wellness. So
Yeah, I would love to dive deeper into that with you about, because I know you and I have talked a lot about kind of what I call whole health is the mind, the body, and the soul, and these different aspects that I think are maybe not always what comes to mind when people think about health. The mind tends to go to, physical fitness and maybe nutrition, but not as much of the mindset aspects or the healing parts of it. So, kind of how did you start to come to that for yourself and integrating that into what you do?
That's a great question. So it's really interesting, my journey as an athlete. I was never an athlete that got things easily. Like I always had to work hard for them. And I kind of became mental because of that. Like I would see a lot of other people just get it and then they just go. And then my body would be like, I don't get it. I don't know what's going on. And so then there was a disconnect. And my biggest struggle came in high school. I had been set to sign my scholarship on Saturday, and I had already been dealing with a fear on balance beam. So balance beam is like this 4-inch piece of wood, 5 feet in the air, and you flip backwards on it. And I had an issue with where you flip backwards, put your hands down, you flip in the air, don't touch the beam, and they land on your feet, called a flick lay. And it was I had already been on and off with it scary for a couple years, pretty much from the time I learned it. And then I got injured the day before I was to sign my scholarship. That injury led to 9 months out of the sport. It was a major break in my arm. It was 2 surgeries, like major stuff happening. And I lost the scholarship. So they said, I got the long letter. It's like, you're welcome to walk on. So I was out for 9 months. I was out of shape. No one knew what to do with me. And guess what grew? My fear, right? And so here I was showing up as a freshman, which we already know is challenging on the mind, right? Like all of a sudden I've left my home, I'm in a new place, I'm rooming with someone. I was the only child, so now I'm rooming with someone in the same room, same space. Her bed is 2-3 feet from my bed. And I'm on this team where I'm coming back and everyone else has already got places, right? Like, and they're already came in with all their stuff. And here I was 9 months out. And so I spent that year trying to get back, both physically and mentally. And my fear had just grown. It was really bad. And so we won national championship that year, and I pulled mats for it, and it just set me on fire. I was like, I am not pulling mats again. I'm going to get a scholarship, and I was like 7 years old when I set that goal. And I had literally made so many sacrifices between 7 and 18 to be at the college and doing gymnastics. And so I went home that summer and I just worked my butt off and came back with more skills on all these events I had never had. I trained at a different gym. I had to drive further for that. And and my series, I got more consistent at throwing it, but I still wasn't going all the time. I still had this fear. So I showed up, but I had a 10-0, like perfect 10 is like the best score you can get in gymnastics in the United States. Now they've changed it internationally, but so I had a 10-5 start on balance beam, like, which is massive. I had extra bonus. I was like trying to make up everywhere I could. And I got cut. So being in the best physical shape I could be, I got cut because my mental wasn't there. I wasn't 100%. And so I was welcome to practice that year. So I did. I got more on fire. And in that process, I went inward and I really learned about who I was. And like this fear made me look at like, who am I? What do I want? And how bad do I want it? And like, what's really driving all this? And so I learned some breathing techniques and I began learning some meditation. And in that process, I really started to get closer and closer to alignment with myself. I came back that next year, my sophomore year, and I earned my junior year, and I earned a scholarship, and I started on balance beam.
Oh, wow.
Because I was really good at it. That's what frustrated everybody to death. I was really good at it. I just wouldn't go all the time because of this fear. It would just stop me dead in my tracks. And so I ended up competing beam and vault that year. And we came up short that year. We got second by 0.125, which is basically like a toe point. Oh. And that was rough. But then I came back my senior year, and at home, we won our national championship. And I was super consistent. At that point, I got to where I could take 3 breaths, and it was just me and the balance beam. It didn't matter how many thousands of people were around. It was just hyper, like, this is it. And I learned so many tools there that I didn't realize were going to grow and prosper as I like grew into a career and began working with athletes. And that opened a door for me that just, it's amplified now. I've done this with thousands of athletes across the globe to help them achieve their goals. And it is this idea of finding your mind, body, spirit, soul, inner alignment, inner being, inner purpose, right? Like once you're in alignment with that, then your whole world around you starts to become in alignment with that. And all this sudden, really hard things, like big things, become quite easy to people use the word manifest, but for them to create and manifest in their life.
So yeah, there's a couple things you talked about, and I wanted to hone in on a couple of them, but one of them was you were mentioning how you at one point you had gotten really good physically and you were like in the best shape, and but yet you were still had this like mental block, or because of the
mental block,
wasn't where it needed to be. So this is one of the things that I talk about a fair amount on the podcast around mindset and helping people understand how what's going on internally is what we're going to see externally. So can you maybe elaborate a little bit on what was going on with the mentality that made you realize, like, oh, if that was different, maybe that would have played out differently?
Oh my gosh, that's like a great question. I love it, Rochelle. So this is really interesting. Rewind after Brandi has done all of this stuff and done a ton of other educational stuff and experiences and healing and all these other things, right? Rewind back to little Brandi, who was, at the time 16 and struggling with her flight. I look back and what really happened with that fear that took over, like literally I'd be sitting in class thinking about what was coming. My hands and my feet would be sweating. My heart would be racing. I'd have a hard time breathing. Like it was like already there. Like it was like I was living it out. Like it was driving my life and every decision. And what had happened was really interesting was I realized now that I had lost connection with that inner little 5 and 7-year-old me who knew who she was, who bounced around everywhere, who just loved life, right? Like she was so happy. Put a sprinkler out in the middle of Texas summer and she's like, yeah, let's go, right? And I had lost connection with that and became so connected to the outer world that the externals began to drive my world. And so the externals at the time when I was 16, my parents were divorcing. There was a whole bunch of drama around it in a very small town. Like I lived in a town of 3,000 people. So it was no hiding what was happening at our household. And on top of that, at 16, when you're a competitive gymnast wanting to go to college or actually any sport, you're already thinking recruiting. You're already thinking what's going to happen next. I set this goal at 7. I've spent the last 9 years doing X. Like I've made all these decisions, and I started gym when I was 3. So I spent a lot of years getting to one goal. No one really is insane. I don't think there's not very many insane people who choose something that's so intense for like so long, right? So what had happened was I just and then you've got the normal, like adolescent, like looking at everybody, looking at your body. And I had already gone through, I had a coach in junior high who weighed us in our sports bras and bikers. So I had struggled with an eating disorder for several years in junior high. And I was eating like an apple a day and training 20 to 30 hours a week. Well, 20 to 24 hours a week to be specific. And that so all of those dynamics began to like bring out the externals, and I just kept losing. It's like I kept losing pieces and pieces of me. Like one thing I talk about with athletes is like their cup of joy, and to treasure their cup of joy. Like everyone has a cup of joy in their heart. Everyone's cup looks different. They fill it with different things. And I like do this whole activity to get people to go inward and find their cup. How full is it? What do you fill it with? And like, then it's like, how do you protect your cup, right? Do you freely give out your joy and let your cup empty? Like, do you let people make a critical comment and empty out your cup? Do you let people judge you? Do you let people tell you what's right or wrong when you know the truth, right? like the whole gaslighting thing. Like I had lots of that around me in my whole life, like lots of that, right? And so what was happening is they would gaslight, pull another, gaslight, pull another, judge me at gym, pull another, criticize me, weigh me in, take another. And I just was emptying my cup left and right, and then never taking time to fill it or to guard it and choose what I wanted to do with my joy. And so that disconnect had me like empty. I was empty, running on empty, training 20 to 26 hours, 28 hours at the time, and sometimes 32, 30, 32. Yeah, I think the most I ever trained was 36 hours a week. But like I was training at these high levels, trying to be a perfectionist, trying to be all A's, right? Like, so all those things, like you have to be, you should, all those things emptied my cup. And I kept getting more and more attached to the have to be's and shoulds and less connected to who is Brandi and what is her sole purpose? And like, how do we align our thought process? I am strong, I am confident, I'm healthy, I am whole, I am enough. And that was a big one. Like I was never enough, it was never enough. And you could insert anything.
Yeah.
And so it came out in fear.
Yeah, it sounds like I mean, it was like this perfect storm of like the physical overexertion with the mental depletion, that combined, with kind of, combining to kind of create this, challenge for you. And then you mentioned the inner healing part, and I love how you described the cup of joy. Like I've never really heard it described that way. I think that's awesome. So then you started to, it sounds like from what you're sharing, like at some point there was an aha or an awareness, like, oh, I'm giving all of this away to all these things externally. So how did you get that inner alignment? How did you fill your own cup and then keep it full, to get yourself kind of connected with the physical, mental, and spiritual parts of yourself?
I tell you, that has come with time and experience and like learning. But like the first avenue to it was when I was in college. That year I got cut, my sophomore year, one of my classes was motor development. And we were talking about the brain and how to create behaviors from the brain perspective, right? And so our semester long project was to pick one big thing we wanted to change about ourselves. And we were going to show how we changed it and how we made the behavioral pattern change. And I remember Dr. Myers, Betty Myers, this woman was so beautiful. And I sat with her, she says, Brandi, she came and she could say I was struggling because I was real. Like at that point I had been cut. I was real. I'm like, something's got to change. Like I knew something needed to change. And here was an assignment. I knew I'd do it. Right. Like, because I was so hooked on grades, right? I got to get a 4.0. And I did, by the way. So graduate magna cum laude, got all A's all the way through my fellowship program. Like that's just like, it's ridiculous, right? So I knew that, but see, I knew enough about myself that I know I'd hook it to something that I would be highly invested in, right? And so she sat with me, she goes, what are you thinking? And I said, I got to deal with this anxiety and stress, like this fear. I'm always a ball. Like, I don't know how to change it, right? And so she's like, that's a great one. So she helped me phrase, what my sentence was, is like the motor pattern sentence. And ended up that day, God does this. You make a decision. And I was walking on campus, like, how am I going to test this? How am I going to change this? I don't know. Like, I'm thinking all these things. And all of a sudden I walk past the wellness center and there's this huge flyer that says, are you struggling with stress and anxiety? I was like, oh, that's me. And it was this wellness program where you had to go in and do this breath work and this meditation. And it was basically the beginning of awareness. Oh. And that's how I entered. And it was so funny because even weird how universe works things out. The time it was offered was during something else I could not get out of. And so they let me go do it privately. Oh, so that private session, God was like, you need this. And so, yeah, so that was the beginning of my awareness. And that level of awareness got me far. Like it got me back into the gym and back into the stuff. But fast forward as a provider who then learned a lot of different healing modalities, neuro-linguistic reprogramming, somatic experiencing. I experienced EMDR. I'm not an EMDR certified person, but like, this whole Alexander technique is all about releasing the energies and the trauma and the nervous system's keeping count, right? Releasing it through the body through movement. And so I've got like 10 or 11 years of experience in that. And so through all these little modalities that came into my life, I gradually became to get much like I began to get connected in college, which is what got me through, was like, what brings me joy? Who am I? Like all of those things began. But I tell you, that's a journey. Like it's a journey in itself, and it's a layer. It's like an onion. Who am I? Like there's this level of truth and another level of truth and another level of truth until I get deep inside the onion, right? And so yeah, somewhere along the way, it's really interesting. Trying to think more details of like how to answer exactly when so I had this aha moment in college that got me far. Just learning awareness and mindset, connecting to the breath and becoming more present inside my own skin. But I mean, you have to fast forward. It took me a little longer and a lot more healing to be like, I remember I was a little around 30 something, like right around 30, 31, somewhere in there, where I was like comfortable in my own skin. Like where I finally like appreciated the body I have. Like it was interesting. And I had been working on it that whole time, but it really didn't like manifest and fully, take on. Like I remember between like, it was my senior year in college that I realized that I had body dysmorphia, where I looked at myself in the mirror and I saw something different than what other people saw. And so in college, we had like a sports nutritionist who helped us like learn about food as fuel. And that was when I first shifted that thought process and began to go inward about food and fuel and like what I need. So for a long time, it was kind of a fake it till you make it. It was like, you don't look like that. Let's go on. You're beautiful. Like, right? Like it was like, I'm beautiful. You're okay. Food is fuel.
That's kind of how it works. I think that's helpful for people to hear and understand. Like that because you're shifting your mindset. You're completely like you're literally reprogramming your brain when you do this. And so in order to do that, you do have to kind of like find these affirmations of what you want to feel and believe, and you repeat them to yourself until you start to embody that. It takes time. It's not something
my first experience with that was physical in high school. So like I wanted to achieve some skills. And so I put on the top of my thing, dream, believe, achieve. I am like, what was it? I am capable, or I am strong. And then I put my list of like skills, and I put them everywhere, like on my textbook, it's back in the day, we didn't really have cell phones. Now I have athletes do it on cell phones, but like I had it on the mirror, I had it on the dinner table, I had it in the refrigerator, I had it in the car, it was everywhere. And there was a list of like 7 skills. I got all of them. So that was my first understanding that if I tell my mind what I want, I can physically achieve it. And then later in college, it was not just the physical aspect, it was the emotional and then the control of the monkey minds that I began. And I found that like the breath work helped me get centered to control the thoughts, right? And then I just realized how much consistency and like one-pointedness and persistency it took to just like hone in the mind to like, I am beautiful. Like the food and that stuff, like it was like, no, you're beautiful. You're eating healthy. You're making good choices. Like keep going. You can have that chocolate. You can have that piece of like, it was like, and it took a while to eat something that was out of what was considered okay in my world and be like, yeah, like enjoy it, right? Like actually get the endorphins and enjoy it. Because as soon as the endorphins would hit, the shame would hit. Like, you can't eat that. Like that, like there was this voice in my head. I'm like, who said that? Like you start talking back to them. Like,
yeah.
It's like, sorry, for those of you listening, I kind of did the arm underneath my hand up to the voice that says, you can't eat that. Like, yes, I can. Like if all I'm eating is chocolate and I'm overindulging, that's different. But like in my scenario, I had more restricted eating issues. And so, it took a while to have, like, I had what I called, and I didn't realize it now, having worked with so many athletes and having some nutritional background and working tandem with like, so if I have someone with a true eating disorder, we work tandem with a nutritionist and specializes in it. And after working with that, I didn't realize, but I had foods that were my safe foods. They were like the foods that were acceptable to increase the amount of food, because in my mind, my brain and my thinking had hooked that they were healthy and good for me. And so it's just really interesting. And I've now had enough other, it's so funny because I realized some of the foods I thought were healthy for me, my body doesn't like gluten. And it wasn't until other health issues later that I like realized it. And I was like, this is part of the reason that one, I wasn't eating enough, but then like the things I thought were healthy were actually not as healthy as I thought. Like I've had my genetics testing done and other stuff. And they got me through, and they were better than not eating anything, which was the problem at the time. So I wouldn't have changed anything for little Brandi, but like now, it's different. It's really interesting to get to enjoy joy. Like it was nice to be in Belgium and be like, yeah, let's get some chocolate. This is like really good.
Huge. And I think because a lot of it is like this, it's almost like an addiction in itself, the sort of that, I don't know, the toxic thinking around that comes with all that stuff that gets woven up together, like body dysmorphia and the like, because I've gone through that myself, and then the sort of, it sounds like similar as you're describing, with like almost this obsessive fear of eating anything that's out of bounds, and that you're automatically just doomed if you do, and that kind of thing. And like, so that's a big part of the healing work as well. But I wanted to go back
that you before you go on, I love that you say an addiction, like an addiction to the thoughts, because I actually fast forward realized like, yeah, like the patterning of the inner critic, like the record player, the broken record player I'd had for so long, that was fed by society and my coaches, my family, like some intentional, some unintentional, right? Like that broken record that was an internal judge, the critic, right? Like the critic, the judge, the perfectionist, the type A, the one way or the highway kind of situation, everything is black and white. Like that was playing, and I realized that I got so used to it that I started to feed it, because I like was getting hits like neurochemically from the judge, from the critic. And it's just really interesting because it really shows how the brain really can get hooked to anything that it, like, to the chemical response, can get hooked into that neural pathway. And what I love about doing with people, and what I found for myself was, there's a lot of different ways to change the pathway and create another exit off the highway, right? Like, and some of that can be positive reinforcement. Some of it can be I am statements. We know that like being in a true state of gratitude releases dopamine, and that can help you. But it is a rewiring, and there are easier ways than not to rewire the brain to make these behavioral changes. But there's a reason why like someone should do a 30-day program with someone, or a reason why someone should do a year-long program with someone, because the human mind and brain, when left on its own, without someone to give accountability or someone to guide, or just to help you stay on track, because you inevitably go it's like I tell people when they come in, this is the way I say it, and it's both physical and mental. When they come into my clinic, I'm like, hey, did you use the door or the wall? And they're like looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, yeah, no, go ahead. It's not your question. They're like, the door. And I was like, why? And they're like, well, because it was easier. And I was like, exactly. You could go through the wall, but you have to hire a construction crew. You need a bunch of tools, right? So my brain and body, so like movement, we have muscles that are tighter than others. Our brain, we have this firing pattern, like from point A to B. And it's just, that's the ingrained pathway. And even though I want to take C, my brain will be like, it's easier to go B. I know it gets there. It may not be exactly what I want, but I know what to expect. It's known. Right. So sometimes we'll stay in behavioral thought processes, movements, like whatever it is, the habit, just because it's easier for the neural pathway to go that way, even though we want to change it, which is why it takes 30, 90 days to make changes. It takes even longer to make like multiple changes, like, like more than simple basics, like, that's why we need, like, basically when you have someone to help guide you, one, they're accountable to keeping you on track, but two, you're getting a good neurochemical dump when you work with them.
Yeah.
Like Rochelle's like giving me feedback, like, yeah, girl, that was great. And I'm like, yes, I needed that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to send you this thing because I want you to tell me that I did good. And why? Because I want the neurochemical hit to say, hey, keep doing that.
Right. Well, especially when you're kind of forging this new path. And I mean, I've found in my own journey that it's it's actually like your brain will actually even fight you. I always think of it as the ego, right? Like it's used to what's safe, which may not always be what's best for you, but it's what your ego has built to keep you safe. And when you're trying to change that, because now you recognize it no longer serves you, it's like this whole inner battle that's going on. And it's totally you're trying to create new neural pathways that aren't there, and so until they're established and they become your norm, which does take time, it takes consistency, repetition, and it's going to be different for everyone because everyone's starting at a different point, but I love what you said too about having that guidance and that help, and that's why that it may be 6 months for one person, it might be a couple of years for another person, just depending.
It
um
depends on what they want to change. It depends
yeah.
on how many limiting beliefs they have, what a story has been built around what you currently have. It depends on how safe they are everywhere else. So
Exactly.
like if someone's in an environment that's super, so one of the, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like I love that because they did this study with that. And this is the whole, like, you need food and shelter and water and, like, the basics. They did a study with monkeys and they basically took away everything except for one piece of Maslow's because they wanted to see which one was the most important. And it was really interesting. They like had one where they took everything away. They were like testing. They gave them shelter, da da da. But and they gave them everything except for one piece, right? They take away the one piece. But the one that I always remember is there was this monkey where they gave him a mechanical mom, and they gave him food, they gave him water, they gave him shelter, they gave him everything else he needed. They gave him a mechanical mom to feed him, and he was the only monkey that could not integrate back into the society. He was killing all the other monkeys, and so they actually had to put him down. And so what it came out was this whole research study on how the greatest thing is love, right? Like that, honestly, if we don't have, so the people who, the more psychology has like done more research on it, and ultimately the people who are the most resilient, right? Our goal is to be resilient. Like life is not perfect, stuff's going to hand me lemons. Can I make lemonade? Am I going to make a way around it? Like, how do I handle? It's not about the stuff coming at me, it's about my reaction, right? Like, how am I going to handle whatever it is that's stretching me mentally, emotionally, physically? And that's what I work with athletes, because that's really anything high level, right? Like a sport that's high level, you want to reach some goal, you want to be a high executive, but even just reaching any goal that's new for you, like every person's high level is wherever they are, right? And so basically what it says, what the studies say, is that like the people who are the most resilient can respond and go around or over or get through the obstacle the healthiest are the people who have unconditional love, the people who feel safe. And so it's really hard to make new changes, say if you're in a domestic violence relationship, or if you're in a situation where you never know what to expect. There's no structure, or the structure keeps changing. It's very hard to be successful in those ways. You can, and matter of fact, I work with a lot of people who don't have control over, say, the gym culture or the environment that's around them. But it requires a lot deeper level of going inward so that you can be like the eye of the storm, and the storm moves around you, but you're still there, or you're that tree that's firmly rooted. And if you can get centered in there and find that the unconditional love is actually within, anything's possible after that. Like at that point, like you can achieve anything, no matter what environment you're in. But you have to get deeper inward for that. It is a tough struggle when you're in these scenarios that you don't feel safe. So it's going inward to find your safety within. And when I look about it, like that was the shift when I was in college that I first discovered with that awareness, was that there was something inside me. I didn't have an understanding of what it was. I have a much deeper understanding now of my soul and my like inner light. But before, and I, by the way, don't always talk about that completely with athletes and people. I want to meet people where they are. But before that, I didn't know that existed. I didn't know inside me was this safe place. And so I was so attached to the outside, which took me wherever I was on a ride. You don't have to be on the ride as long as you go inward and really find that center.
That's just we could probably have a whole other episode about just that part of things, because it's so
Make a note. We'll do it. Let's do it.
because I mean it's so true, and it's like that, but it's getting to that point where you can tap into that consistently. So
Yeah.
With that in mind, now you talked a little bit about and kind of touched a little bit about how you help other people and work with people. So can you maybe share a little bit about what you do with athletes, kind of what your services look like, and what do you have going on right now that people might want to learn more about?
Well, so I've been in the world of physical therapy and performance training, and that looks like both individual, in person, and virtual. And it also looks like groups and performance clinics. So sometimes I go into gyms, dance studios, like places where there's a lot of athletes, and they bring me in and they would customize a program for them. Like what is it that entire group of people, entire team is struggling with, and how can I use my skill set to help them overcome those struggles, right? And then same thing on an individual basis in both in person and virtual. It's an injury and pain, right? But then also it may just be that I want to achieve this goal and I'm not getting there. I'm hitting a ceiling or a block and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's mental, maybe it's emotional, maybe it's physical. But I help people get through those blocks to get on the other side, right? And usually that means we have to go inward. And we almost always have to go inward. That's a piece of it. Whoever's really open, I meet whoever's in front of me with where they are, as far as how deep we can go and how it unravels. So a lot of people stay with me for maintenance programs just to keep unraveling the next piece of what's happening in their life and their world. Because we go from everything from like stress management tools and sleeping habits, and other behaviors that may be not serving them, all the way into the physical, the nutritional, like the mental aspects, right? And how to train all of those pieces and how they integrate. But what I'm really excited about also is I just started Perfect 10 PT Academy, because I've been teaching across the globe for so long. It's like, how do I, 1 hour thing and I leave you? Like, it's hard to make a behavioral change. Like, how can I help people make sustainable changes and light their lights so they can light more lights in the world? And so we started online courses through Perfect 10 PT Academy, and we've released our first course, Introduction to Championship Mindset. And then in January, we're starting the Invincible Athlete, which is a year-long program. I'm so excited. It's a year-long program where you see me once a month for really big masterminds. And then every week we do check-ins, 30 to 40 minutes, where we're going to, boost things, add details, deal with all the struggles and obstacles that come up. And so you'll do that. We'll do that for the whole year. And I have a bunch of guests coming in, like massive guests. Like I've got a sports psychologist coming in 3 times. She's worked with Olympic athletes ever since. She's had multiple athletes every Olympic year since 2000. So she's been doing it for a while. And she works also in the high corporate world as well. So she works both ends. And then I have a sports nutritionist coming in. She's a former Olympian. So Doc Allison Arnold is a sports psychologist. Maria Flores is the sports nutritionist. She was former Olympian and current sports nutritionist. I have biomechanics Jerry George coming in, and both of those guys are coming in. Well, she's coming in 3 times, he's coming in 4 times. I have a neural performance coach, Yuka Suguria, coming in, and we're going to talk about how to really enhance your brain connection to get output in performance. We have one of my colleagues, Stephanie Foster, coming in. She's a physical therapist who specializes in pelvic health and the core and the central stability system. So urinary leakage with exercise. She's going to come in and talk about that, and then talk about a lot of myths. She's going to bust so many myths. We both have busted a lot of them about core and how to train the core. The biomechanics guys coming in for squatting and running and flexibility and strength training. We have, I know I'm forgetting. Oh, and we have Nicole Langvian coming in about artistry and how to find the inner artist, the inner soul, the inner drive, and bring it out into whatever it is you're doing, right? And then like helping us give a perspective on what's really important. Is it really the outcomes, or is it something bigger, right? And then we have several other Olympic athletes coming in, current Olympic athletes. We have also some people, because I really believe that sport is a vehicle to experience, learn, and grow. And you can harness all those attributes that you gather, you know, perseverant, dedicated, determined, a good time manager, like can do hard things and get back up, right? Like harness all that and bring it into our life. And so we have the Life After Sport program, and we have a bunch of people coming in who are going to talk about their experience as athletes, and what a struggle it was to find their life right after sport, and then what it is they harnessed, and then what they're doing with it now. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about it. And so that one opens in January, called the Invincible Athlete. And it's for coaches, parents, and athletes, or super active people who are wanting to go to the next level. And the big surprise I have is that just for today, is now the time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just for today only, for Black Friday, I am, for you guys, going to be releasing a Black Friday special, 67% off of everything. 67% off of the online courses, 67% off of my virtual and in-person services. And I'm doing a giveaway. I'm giving away 1 year with me.
Wow.
One Invincible Athlete. I know, right?
Dang,
I'm excited.
everyone's paying attention for getting that giveaway.
That's right. That's right. So the links below, the links are going to be in the episode description. So click the links and you can sign up for the free giveaway, and you can sign up for the Black Friday specials.
Wow. Well, that sounds amazing. So yeah, as Brandi mentioned, check out the episode descriptions for the links. And then if you're on my socials, I'm also going to be sharing those on there. So you'll want to keep an eye out on that as well. Definitely make sure you take advantage of that. That sounds like some incredible packages going on, and I mean a whole free year giveaway. That's unheard of. So
can you believe it? A free year?
no, I'm
excited. I mean, that's how much I think the program, I love the program so much. I want to give away one so that someone can enjoy it, because I know that there are some people who really, really want it, but maybe it's just not on their plate right now. So I would love to give away one so that we can really get together.
Yeah. Well, it is the perfect time of year for that. That is amazing. All right. Well, thank you again so much, Brandi, for joining me today. I think this has been a fascinating conversation, and I'm sure all the listeners will agree. Really appreciated you coming on and just having such an amazing conversation about all of these things around health and our mind and our body and our soul. And so again, check out the episode description to get all those links and get in on those great deals that Brandi's got going right now. And so that concludes today's episode of Faith, Fitness, Joy. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, I'd love to hear from you. So please like and subscribe, or share anything that resonated for you in the comments. And I will see you in the next episode. Thanks so much for tuning in today.